Welcome, everybody. Vendetta Sports Media. It is April 20th, and this is the Daily Show. James Herrick, Jeremani, how we doing?
What's going on? What's going on? It's a good day. Hopefully, I did the Daily Show at Hannafin a few days ago around this time, and the sun was causing some problems. So, I mean, again, me and him were there for like 2.5 hours. It was a good show, but like I'm just hoping the sun kind of calms down. I do see clouds in the sky, so hopefully I don't get beamed. But if you see me messing around with like the sun, you can see the light changing. So it's like I told him the whole story about it, about like the sun, me and him being mortal enemies throughout the summertime, but. Hopefully that changes in the future. A lot of good stuff going on. But today I'm feeling good.
Yeah, we got a little bit of sun over here. Not as much as you, but I'm glad we've got sun.
Look at that. My God.
Dude, I'm over here in Michigan, and we were getting snow, I think, on Monday. I had to put out the winter coat in April. It was a rough look, so I'll take sun any day at this point.
Hey, respect that.
In the sports world, we got some big news this morning. Big news. The A's buying land in Las Vegas. Looks like they're moving to Vegas. Obviously not official, but when you buy the plot of land that everyone assumes the stadium's going to go on, it's pretty much a formality at this point. So I'll let you take it away. I'm sure you've got some opinions. I've got some as well, but I want to hear your thoughts. The A's in Vegas, what are we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, the thing, like, my thing is I've been a huge advocate for Tampa Bay and Oakland, especially for getting new stadiums. Tropicana Field is horrendous in terms of, like, I don't even know. Like, that stadium was built in, like not even, like, maybe 20 years old. I'm not sure. Something along the lines. So it's been around for a little bit, but not so long compared to other stadiums. But it hasn't been kept up well. But in terms of, it's kind of the same thing with the Oakland Coliseum. Like, the fans aren't as invested, even though I know over there, how passionate Oakland A's fans can be, especially when it came around postseason time. So like the fan base was strong. It seems like just the way the guys in the front office with the whole Moneyball thing, and they're holding true to that standing pat. Hopefully this move to Las Vegas gives them a better image. At least it will be I'm sure the ballpark will look absolutely amazing. So, and I feel like Las Vegas is kind of like one of those places you feel needs to have like sports teams, or at least that's where we're following. Like that's where the money's leading to anyway. So I like the move. I feel any way to get one less team out of California is probably like the best. And that goes for a bunch of different sports, because it seems like California has like 5 different teams in like every sports league out there. But I do like the move. I feel like it was a matter of time for them to end up in Vegas, but hopefully this kind of transaction makes its way into the on-field product and actually go and get some free agents to actually keep some superstar players instead of trading them away.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the move, so I'll take the opposite stance, but I'm not a fan I don't really disagree with some of the points you made about like, hopefully this brings more money to the team like that. I agree with, hopefully the fans get more interest there, but I just don't like to see a city like Oakland lose the A's, because I do think there's a piece of history there. And I might be, acting like an old head saying, keep the A's in Oakland. But that's the legacy standpoint for me is kind of my hold up with it. I'm sure it makes sense on the business end. I would have just rather seen them get a new stadium there in Oakland. But at the same time, there's a reason that wasn't happening, right? It's not like they weren't trying. So I get why we're making the move. And Vegas, I agree, is a place that needs a team. If you're adding expansion teams, I don't hate Vegas at all. Vegas, I think, is a good spot. Growing. The Raiders are having success there. There's a lot of there's a lot of teams there in Vegas they're doing good stuff. So I don't hate them moving to Vegas if they're going to move, but I would have rather seen them stay in Oakland. And as far as the team goes, I wish they would put more effort, like you said, into that on-field product where it doesn't even feel like Moneyball. It doesn't even feel like they're trying to find those cheap players that can win. It just feels like they're trying to find cheap players. End of sentence. So I hope it does kind of keep some star players with the A's. I hope that on-field product gets a little bit better, because ultimately that will help them more than anything if they can get a little bit better on the field.
Yeah, it's not even money ball anymore. Actually, it's more like welfare ball. If you're putting it in like in your terminology anyway, because I feel with the potential move, they start. I'm not sure if I'm using this term in the correct phrasing, but like liquidating all their all their assets, so it makes it easier to like get relocated and then be like, then start building the team up again. And like, I don't know, it's weird, but usually that would come with the sale of a team anyway. But I feel if they don't have the team's best interests at heart, then obviously I feel it should be in the hands of people who do. And that's like a whole opinion I can have about owners of any type of a team or any sort of a franchise. But
Mhm.
just listening from your point of view, it does suck, especially for like the fans of Oakland, because like I said before, like how passionate those guys can actually be when the team is actually good and they're invested and the team's investing in themselves. That like I feel there should be a team in Oakland and like get an expansion and get another two teams in the league and then have a team over there in Vegas instead of making them the Las Vegas Athletics, you know? So I'm in the same boat with you in terms of I want Oakland to keep a team because of the fans there. But also I was more looking at it from like the business point of view and seeing like they wanted to push. It seemed like they wanted to push the Athletics out there to Vegas to get them out of Oakland, which sucks.
Yeah, and I'm with you too, kind of off the back of that with expansion. You've got 30 teams, right? The NFL has proven you can work with 32. I think there's plenty of room to get an extra two teams. Vegas would have been a good spot for expansion. Obviously, now that's probably off the books. Montreal, you can always take a team back there. So I don't think you're running out of cities that you could expand to. So I do think, it probably would have made more sense to get that expansion team in Vegas because if you're adding expansion teams, I don't know how that whole process works, but if you have to sell an expansion team, putting a team in Vegas would have been very appealing to a new owner that's looking to get in the MLB. So, I do agree with you with what you said though about the business standpoint about hopefully this makes sense and hopefully they can get a nice new ballpark because if it was the city of Oakland that was holding things back from them getting a ballpark and not the owners there, then you can't really hate on them for wanting to get out of the city if the city's not letting them get that new ballpark they want because what they have now, like you said earlier, it's not a good ballpark at all.
It's not. It's falling. It's pretty much about to crumble on itself for the most part. And then there, like the thing, like one of the worst things I see during like the MLB season is just like not to bring up your Tigers, but teams like the Reds, the Tigers, and the Athletics. A lot of those teams that aren't like in playoff contention like that or any are just trying to get by are just like the stadiums are damn near empty, and it's like.
Mm-hmm.
Even for like bigger market teams when they're not like think of the Yankees for example, even if they're around 500, people are still going to go to the ballpark and people are still going to pack the seats. I feel hopefully with this move that changes at least for one franchise and just to show that there's fan interest, but it's also about the teams being invested in themselves to want to win. That's the main goal about all of it, isn't it? In terms of sports, you want to make it to the top, and just seeing teams kind of be okay with mediocrity, that just doesn't sit right with me, especially if I was an owner anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hate owners that really just aren't really trying to make the moves to get better.
Cincinnati.
And yep, Cincinnati is a great example. And it's tough too because we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I'll bring it up now. When you look at a team like Detroit last year, they were trying to win. Like they wanted to make a couple big moves, wanted to bring in some good players. So what they do, they brought in Javi Baez, brought in Eduardo Rodriguez, and traded for Austin Meadows. Javi Baez has played terrible. Eduardo Rodriguez barely played last year, had a great start last time out. So hopefully that's starting to turn around for Eduardo. Austin Meadows obviously has been dealing with some mental health issues. So I don't want to like bury in on him for not playing, but it's like even the trade that they made for him was a desperate trade. They gave up Paredes, who's played well, and they gave up a draft pick too. That's the one thing that people never talk about with that trade is they gave up, I think it was a second round comp pick. So it's like, not only are you giving up the player, Paredes has played well, but you're giving up the draft pick. So it's almost like I agree that teams should win, but it's like there's also teams that like the Tigers tried once and they really shot themselves in the foot last year going out there and trying to win. But I do agree with your overall point of like, hey, we need to figure something out. We need to see some progression. Teams like Oakland have been trading away good players forever in the hopes of getting cheaper guys, younger guys. But still, there's like that aspect of teams that the Tigers tried and it failed miserably for them. And, so I do think that's kind of at play too.
Yeah, like just kind of like change gears a little bit towards like Javier Baez. It's been like 17 games into the season,
Mhm.
and this is the thing, kind of like the bridge these two segments together. It's like these teams, like these smaller market teams, or teams that aren't like can't rely on like kind of that mass appeal. Like you got the Yankees, you got the Red Sox to a degree, the Dodgers. Not every team is like that. So when certain teams that aren't in that kind of marketability and they go out and try to make playoff moves and make championship caliber moves, and they and it doesn't work out for them, then they start overthinking or they start rethinking trying to make those kinds of decisions, and it only puts a detriment on like the team's future trajectory anyway. Like
Mhm.
so I believe in terms of like just to use my Red Sox for example, then they signed guys like Carl Crawford and Pablo Sandoval. They've had a history of bad contracts, but they also have a history of really good contracts. JD Martinez being the most recent option, and even David Price to a degree, even though David Price was the main reason that the Red Sox had to trade Mookie Betts, and then like just bad memories. I'm not even going to dive into that like that. But my point is that you can't be afraid of failure, and I feel like that's what some of these guys are making moves to protect their jobs or the lack thereof to protect their jobs anyway. But the main thing is about putting the team in the best position to win. And if you feel like you can't do that, then you shouldn't be in this kind of line of work anyway.
Mhm.
Like somebody like when Dave Dombrowski was making all the decisions for the Red Sox a few years back, he was not worried about what this team's going to look like 10, 15 years down the line because he knows he maybe has maybe a 4 or 5 year window, and then he's off to his next team off doing making decisions for them now since he's with Philadelphia. So he made those kinds of moves of bringing in JD Martinez, a bunch of those kinds of guys. I feel like more teams need to follow that kind of example. If just to actually have a plan, because you signed Javier Baez, it seemed like that was the one move to lead to more moves. So now seeing how that works, how Javier Baez has been working out for them for this first year and not even a quarter into that Tigers contract, I'm just hoping for your sake anyway, being a Tigers fan, that this doesn't hinder them still trying to compete.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too with Javier as well. Well, the thing that I find crazy about him is that he will play some of the worst baseball that you've ever seen for a period of time, whether that period of time be a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, even. But the second people get on him, the second people are like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" Like, wow, when he had that base running error, terrible, terrible, terrible. But then he gets criticized. He gets benched, criticized. All those things happen, and then the best baseball he's played has come immediately after that. That's the one thing about him that I like just can never understand. Where it's like put it together for like 162, put it together for 100 even, but he'll put it together for a week, and I don't know how he manages to do that at all. But that's one thing that Javier Baez has found a way to do. I think he went 2 for 3 the night after he got benched. And but to your point, that the other point you made, like a lot of these teams will take the money move without having the foundation set, which is something that the Rays are very good at, is building the foundation. The Rays have always had, good player development, something Cleveland's good at too, building with actual player development and having the foundations of a good team, right? Building a good pitching staff, getting a good bullpen, finding players, figuring out how they fit in their roster. They're good at building the foundation, and then you can go on and add a big contract or two on top of the foundation. What a lot of teams are trying to do, and what the Tigers tried to do, was take a big, just pour money on it and hope it works, right? They're building on no foundation, which is I think something that a lot of teams do that really hurts them.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I said before, just to readdress that point, is that it seemed like Javier Baez was like the first move, and
Hmm.
then the
Hmm.
subsequent moves after that didn't happen or didn't line up because it's like Detroit was still a young team. It still is a young team. You have Javier Baez, and then you have Riley Green. I'm not sure how he's been playing. I haven't been keeping up with a lot of Tigers games, but he was like a bright spot. And then you have when Meadows gets right and comes back, then you have yourself a guy to start building your rotation around a little bit, and Erod. But then they just didn't start addressing anything else. So it's like, do you guys want to compete or do you guys want to rebuild? But now it's more now they're just trying to figure out what's the deal with Javier Baez.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I don't believe that Javier plays out that entire contract with Detroit. I'm curious on your thought process of it, and do you think like him getting traded would probably be a better option if things like kind of snowball a little bit because he had the benching and all that extra stuff.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I know he's got an opt out at least. I think it might be after this year, it might be after next year. I don't think he takes the opt out though. I think you're right. I think it does have to be a trade just because I don't think he's going to get more money or even close to the amount of money that he's making right now. And as far as the trade goes, I think that could be interesting and I think it could work. But it's going to come down to how much money do the Tigers have to eat out of that contract? And it's going to come down to who's willing to take a chance on him and how big of a chance do you have to take. And kind of going back to your previous point, and this kind of ties in about what are the Tigers trying to win, right? And that's what it's going to come down to with what they're trying to do with Baez. Because I think Baez, if you put him on a winning team, I think he actually will like play better, right? I think it's more of a focus thing where if you're actually in contention and in close games and in a race trying to win the division, I think that's when he plays his best baseball. When the Tigers are, 25 games under 500, I don't think there's any motivation for him to go out there and even attempt to play good baseball or be a good baseball player. And I think it's going to be very telling what the Tigers do this offseason. Just because first you're getting Miguel Cabrera's $31 million off the books, right? His contract's done, so you're getting that's a lot of money that he's getting paid this season.
He's still like what he just turned 40, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, it was in fairness to Miggy, when they gave him that contract, he had a lot of leverage. Yeah, he deserved it, and it's biting them now because he's in the 40s, he's old, and
that's I feel like that's what's gonna happen to a lot of guys. You got Judge, you got Turner, Bogarts, like that's gonna happen to a lot of people. So people should just start getting used to that kind of thing.
Yep. But for the Tigers, that money's coming off the books this year, so they'll have an extra 31 million to play with. But off the back of that, you're also getting Mize back from injury. Scooble's injured right now. I think he's coming back. So you've got some guys coming back from injury too. You get another year to kind of analyze what you have with Green and Torkelson. I think Green is going to end up being a good major league player. I'm not sure that he's going to be an all-star, but I think he can be a consistent center fielder. Good defensively, gets on base. He's been playing well. Hasn't been anything tremendous, but he's been one of the few bright spots for the Tigers. Torkelson has been around 215 all year. Hit his second home run of the year a couple days ago. So, but if the Tigers, I think after this season, they'll be able to figure out what the next move is. And then I think at that point, you can kind of look at Javier Baez and decide, yeah, we're in a position where we think we can win, so we'll keep him. Or no, we need to figure out how to get this guy off the team, just even if it's so we can get a younger guy in here and try and be successful 3-4 years down the road.
It's funny because, like, to your point about him being in a better environment or in a winning environment, like how he was when he played for the Mets for that half a season, and like the whole story around him going to the Mets is like, oh, he strikes out too much. How's he going to play alongside Lindor? Is he going to try to adapt and actually try to hone in on his game? Because the biggest thing for him that a lot of people see is that he loves chasing out of the zone. Like if you throw him an outside slider, he's gonna look at it like a meatball down the middle. Like he's gonna swing at a lot of that kind of thing. But also him striking out like nearly 200 times a year. But again, him having the potential to hit 25, 30 home runs and get yourself like 90 to 100 RBIs. You would take that trade if that's exactly what you're going to be getting out of Javier Baez in a winning environment. So I do think that if he were to become available, obviously to your point that how much money is the Tigers going to eat? Say like the Tigers like take a large sum of that contract, and teams are going to be getting Javier Baez for a discount. I feel even Javier Baez right now can be a player, like a really good player on a lot of these contending teams, especially some teams that could be in desperate need of like some infield upgrade anyway. So like I would say like the Tigers eat like a good portion of the contract, and you add in a throw-in or maybe an arm or something. I feel like teams will be that would at least mean you get yourself at least a decent deal back, no matter how he's playing. If it means the financial, because you're not going to be using that money on anybody anyway. If you're looking to try to retool and just see how you guys are looking 4 or 5 years down the road, then that can mean you can get yourself an MLB ready player and maybe a prospect or two. If it means you have, I feel like a trade like that would probably work better in the Tigers' favor than anything. But that's just my point of view on it.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And to your point, for a team looking to add Baez, I wouldn't hate seeing him go back to second. I think that could be beneficial for him. I think he's always played a good second base, right? I think he's someone where I'd much rather have him at second because he'll play an above average second base. You see those, like the biggest concern with Baez defensively is that he will just absolutely whip like a piss missile right at the first baseman's shins, or he'll throw it like a mile over the head. So those are his problems defensively. He's still rangy. He'll still make plays, but it's the actual arm. So I think that isn't as big of an issue when you put him at second. So I think if a team's looking to add him to and be a playoff contender, I think second base may be the move, because also at that point he can play an above average second base, and you don't need your second baseman to be as productive offensively. You don't need your second baseman to, be your 3-hole hitter. So I think that may help a team looking to add him, is that you can play him at second as well as short. So I think that may come into play for anyone looking to add him, to your point. And I don't hate the Tigers moving off him, but it just might not be at the deadline this year. It may be more of an offseason move for him. But if you can get the right price at the deadline, then it may make sense for him.
For some weird reason, I can picture him playing in LA, like the Dodgers or something. Like, just for some reason, just some team that would just be like, "Oh yeah, we'll fix you." This was the only problem. It's like, oh, and then he's back to being an all-star. But no, but yeah, for sure.
Yep. And then kind of moving off Baez, another team that's an interesting team, not for the same reason that we've talked about, but the Angels, an interesting team, because they've got Trout and they've got Ohtani, and they're 9-9, I think, through 18 games. I think I looked before this, or I looked last night.
Good question.
They're right around 500. And a report came out that the Angels and Shohei Ohtani may not be a long-term thing, and Shohei could be on the move if the Angels are not playoff contenders. So I want to hear your take. What do you think is the best move for Shohei and the Angels both? Do you think that's a long-term future? Or do you think we're looking at a breakup here in probably relatively soon?
Yeah, so I remember talking with Milo about this maybe before the MLB season even started, maybe like a month ago from now. But I was more I feel it was contingent on especially how the Angels were playing come the trade deadline. If they are out of the race, they're trading him, because he's too valuable of an asset to you just let walk. You don't just let anybody like that walk off your team for nothing. It doesn't matter what team you are. You have to get something for him. Even if it's a half a season of Shohei Ohtani getting traded to a team on the come up like the Cubs or something, or even the Dodgers, which seems a lot more likely. I feel like one of those big market teams would have no problem shelling out prospects and anything they can to get Shohei Ohtani, even for a half a season, because just the fact that there's two-way capability. This is like just the first time in ever we're going to see somebody like this, of this talent level, be available for any team on the market to get them. Like we may not see something like this again for who knows how long, because I feel like Shohei is going to be a trailblazer in that aspect, to start sparking a lot more players trying to make two-way a thing. But in terms of just Shohei's case, I feel that I don't really buy the Angels as a huge threat. I think it's terms of just the front office moves, and kind of, I feel like it's going to take a gigantic wake-up call for them, like hence being Shohei Ohtani leaving, to kind of have them reevaluate everything. And even like, I'm not even the biggest fan of Artie Moreno kind of still having ownership of the team. He was wanting to sell the team in the offseason, then he changes his mind. He was selling out a bunch of bad contracts to Albert Pujols, who did deserve it, but again, it was like giving him a 10-year contract when he was already 30. He was kind of just shooting himself in the foot there. You signed Josh Hamilton, and then like they just kept addressing offense but never addressed pitching over those years. And Mike Trout's 31 years old now, and he's only had one playoff game to really, or either one series or one playoff game. Either way, that it's a robbery to not only the Angels and their fan base, but it's a crime against the rest of baseball that some of the best players in the league's history aren't in the postseason either every year or every other year. So for me, from a fan's point of view, I would want to see Shohei Ohtani in a different situation, even if it's for half a season or he gets traded and then he signs with a team long term. All I know is that the Angels, like, they squandered it. They squandered a prime of Mike Trout. I don't want them to do the same with Shohei Ohtani. And I feel, and it's just crazy to me how you managed to get two of the best players in the league of like the last 15, 20 years, and you guys didn't make the postseason with them. So for me, I think Shohei gets traded at the deadline because I feel they're going to be treading water. And even last year when they were one of the better teams in their division, and then they just go on a massive slump, and then that dictates the rest of the season. Baseball is a weird sport. They could turn it on and be the best team in the league for the rest of the year or something like that. That's what I love so much about the sport. It's so unpredictable. But for me, the way I'm thinking now, and the same way I'm thinking before the season even started, Shohei's probably going to get traded at the deadline for probably the biggest package you'll ever see for a 1 year, not even a 1 year rental, for a half year rental.
Yeah, and so I agree with pretty much everything you said there. And I guess I'll start off what I have to say with the fact that first of all, you don't see MVPs on the block that often. He'll be at an MVP level. He'll be in the MVP conversation. So first of all, that's not normal. Second of all, how many, he's literally the only player ever where you can address starting pitching and hitting with one move. So any team, if you have two issues, you can solve them with one player. Mathematically, that's pretty beneficial. So, and that just goes to speak to the uniqueness of Shohei Ohtani. But I do think the Dodgers are the team that makes the most sense. I don't necessarily like that. I think I'd love to see Shohei Ohtani on a team that's going to be in the playoffs, but not a big market team, because a team like the Dodgers are going to get eyes regardless. But a team that may not get the eyes, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, the Mariners. Like, imagine him on the Mariners last year when they're in the playoffs for the first time, and imagine having Shohei Ohtani on that team. I think that would just be fun. So from a fan perspective, that's something that I would root for him to go to a cool team, maybe a little bit of a smaller market team that may not have to commit to paying him for an extended period of time. I think that could be cool, and it could bring some eyes to a small market team that may not get them, like the Dodgers, like the Yankees. But if we're speaking realistically, Dodgers not only have, like, the Dodgers could make him an offer at the end of the year and even try and keep him if he enjoys his time. If they're successful, that may be in the cards, but they also have the prospects to put together the package, which I think at the end of the day is something that not many teams have, because like you said, it's going to be a record deal, and the Dodgers actually have the prospects and the young names to put together a really interesting package to actually entice the Angels to make the move. So I do think he gets moved. I agree with you. If the Angels are below 500 or even close to 500, I think, he's probably getting moved because he is such a valuable asset, and you don't want to let him walk for nothing. And are you winning the World Series this year if you're the Angels? Probably not. Is he re-signing if you don't make the playoffs? Probably not. So I don't really see the need to keep him, other than you want to stay in the news cycle for 3 extra months because you have Shohei Ohtani. Either way, you still have Mike Trout, so you're still going to be in the news cycle. You're still going to be a viewed team because you have the best player in the league on your team. Well, maybe he's not the best player anymore, but he's still Mike Trout.
Yeah, he's still at least top 3. I feel like when he's at his best, Mike Trout is still one of the best players of baseball, and that's the thing that hurts about it so much, is that just the lack of October baseball under both of their belts, really. And Shohei is already going to be going into his, I believe, his 6th or 7th season, because I believe he debuted in 18. So yeah, so maybe this time next year, maybe 6 or 7, and he's still yet to even make it to the postseason, being one of the better players in the league. So I guess it's like it's a testament to what I was saying earlier, like how much I love the sport and the unpredictability of it. But also to your point, I would love to see him and not go to a big market team, even though that seems like the most likely destination. But like to your point, like the Mariners, him going to the Mariners, I feel like would be absolutely awesome because I don't care what fan you are, whatever team you want. I feel like everybody was rooting for the Mariners just to have a good postseason or just
Mm-hmm.
be able to make it to the postseason. So I feel like him being put on the Mariners would just put that team over the top to at least make a World Series appearance. But it depends because even if you and it's like to your point again, like with a smaller market team, they may be like, hey, we know we're not going to be able to re-sign you, but we want you. You're the definition of a rental, so just enjoy the 40 or 50 games you have here, and then let's try to enjoy some postseason success, and then you can sign with whatever team you want
Mm-hmm.
or go back to whatever team you want. Kind of like with Aroldis Chapman, he got traded from the Yankees to the Cubs, they won the World Series, and then he just ends up going back to the Yankees. Obviously, it's two different situations, but I don't know. And it also allows me to think a little bit about Mike Trout and the whole situation because what is that like? Do you reevaluate your situation? Like he's there, he's signed for the rest of his career as an Angel, but it just I don't know if Mike Trout's like the kind of person to be like, yeah, I'm done here because I feel like if Shohei never went to the Angels, is Mike Trout like content with just being there? You know, like kind of. I guess what I want to ask is like, if Shohei gets traded, does Mike Trout find a way, or is Mike Trout on a different team in the next couple of years?
I think that's a good question, and I think the answer to that lies more on the Angels than Trout because I think Trout seems like the type of guy to stay on that team. Trout doesn't seem like the type of guy to request a trade, but the Angels may say, "Hey, we just traded Ohtani. We got these 4 prospects. Why don't we just now trade Trout because now we're definitely not in a position to win. We weren't in a position to win before. We're definitely not in one now. So how about we just trade Trout now? And then now you have 2 of the largest trade packages of all time, presumably. You're looking at 2 of massive packages. So now you're getting a group of young players, whether that be 5, 6 prospects that are probably all on similar timelines to getting to the MLB. So I do think that could help you win eventually, rather than what you're doing now, kind of middling. So I think it does make sense to where the Angels may just go, hey, we'll just make the move. We'll make the decision. We won't put that decision on to Trout. We'll make it ourselves. We'll ship them out. We'll get the prospects and try and build something here, which may be more helpful in the long run, actually.
Yeah, I feel like Shohei and Trout. Imagine if they got put into a package together. Just, like the amount, like 50 prospects getting sent back to the Angels in exchange for Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. So I mean, but it's something to look at. I've been trying to keep an eye on the Angels, and just it's funny seeing a lot more of the headlines now, like Boston Red Sox fans sitting in front of Angels' team bus waiting for Shohei. Aaron Judge talking to the media about Shohei Ohtani. So it's interesting to see, but yeah, I guess like as the season goes on, it will make things will start heating up a little bit. But I do think ultimately he's probably going to get moved.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm with you. And kind of off the back, or not really off the back of that. I don't know why I said that at all. Completely moving on, not off the back of anything. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. We're in the first big stretch of games here, and we've got a handful of things to talk about regarding the NBA. But we'll start it off with last night. A little bit of a recap. Grizzlies take game 2 from the Lakers. I was kind of surprised personally. I thought this was going to be a Lakers series after they win game 1, look good in game 1. Ja Morant's out game 2. I thought this was going to be the Lakers taking game 2, getting 2 wins on the road and, putting themselves in a position to win that series. Not what we got. So I think that's kind of a surprise to me personally. But we also had Dillon Brooks, who stole some headlines because he was trash talking LeBron. So give me your thoughts on this. Give me your thoughts on Dillon Brooks and the series as a whole.
I feel a lot of people were surprised that the Grizzlies are putting up the fight that they did. Like, keep in mind, I was speaking to Hannafin about this a couple days ago, that like they didn't make noise even without Ja through the stretch of the postseason last year, and ultimately losing to Golden State. But even during the regular season, they had a positive record even with Ja out of the lineup. and this is remote, like virtually the same team with the same group of guys. Obviously, missing a few guys in Clark and Adams with injuries, but like with a team being led by Desmond Bain and Jaren Jackson Jr., like those guys were still able to compete. I believe Xavier Tillman had like 22 points, and then you had LeBron being LeBron, but then you had D'Angelo Russell not producing. I believe like 80 had a bad game. The game was late, so like that's the whole discussion for a little bit later, and I gotta put my 2 cents in about that. But the Grizzlies are still a good team even without their best player, and that's what a lot of like the really good player or really good teams, I should say, like with depth or in terms of like just depth in like the star player category anyway, are just being able to compensate and not having to run just through their superstar. So credit to the Grizzlies, and it's also credit to the coaching and all that stuff, putting those guys in a position in the best position possible and given the situation. So and Dylan Brooks, I gotta give him credit, because here's the thing: Dylan Brooks is a role player for a up and coming team, and this guy, for the most part, he's not a superstar, he's not even a star, let alone all star, but he found a way to make himself marketable by spewing out and talking shit about anybody and everybody, talking trash about Golden State and how they're going back and forth and there's a rivalry there. Talking about Draymond Green having a beef with him for the majority of the season, making headlines, and having people like us and other people in the media talking about him like he's one of the top 5 players in the NBA. Not to say in terms of like, I'm talking about in terms of just getting his face on the screen and being the headlines for stories to get clicks and stuff like that. So kudos to him. I feel like more people should probably take that route. They want to make a name for themselves. Absolutely. Because you don't ever hear anybody talking about his basketball ability. Like I'm pretty sure like casual NBA fans would be like, is this guy good, or is he like, but I always feel like I'm glad in that regard, but I feel like it's just him spewing some more nonsense. Like he was talking about how LeBron's old and nobody's worried about LeBron, and it sparked a whole conversation. But then it gets me excited for Game 3, because like LeBron is kind of like, even though like LeBron's a professional, he still is one to kind of like not really have his game do the talking, but I'm pretty sure he's going to try to get his during Game 3 anyway. So it makes for a lot more entertaining series, and that's like pretty much like the whole thing with Dylan Brooks. It's entertaining from a fan's point of view. So I said like this series was going to be good. It was contingent on Ja's health and Anthony Davis's health for me anyway. But seeing after Game 2, like I feel it's still going to be a dogfight even though Ja's out, and I believe he's just going to return for Game 3. So it just makes this series a lot more entertaining than it already was.
Yeah, and LeBron is petty. LeBron is petty. you say something about LeBron, he will go out there and try and put 30 on you. So maybe that's what we're gonna get this game. And I do agree with you. It does make the series more entertaining. I'm not really a Dylan Brooks fan. I don't really like listening to him, but I can't really disagree with you, right? I can't sit here and be like he didn't like you said. People are talking about him, right? And that is something that wouldn't be the case otherwise. So what he has done has worked, right? I can't take that away from him, whether I like him or dislike him. You got to give him credit in that regard. And to your point about what people are talking about, right? He has helped that team a lot in terms of stealing headlines, right? Because for the longest time, instead of sitting here and talking about John Morant, right? Because John Morant had his own struggles throughout the year, his own negative headlines. Dylan Brooks was kind of saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. Don't look at him. Don't look at Ja. Look at me. So I do kind of think that kind of helped the Grizzlies in a way where if he can deal with that and he can take the negatives and he can take the headlines and he can take the conversations and kind of shift those off of teammates and off of Ja, I think that's kind of a net positive for that team. So I do think that is something that isn't really talked about that I think does help that team. And the one thing I will say about Dylan Brooks' actual basketball ability, regardless of the NBA stuff, sometimes he doesn't play well, sometimes he doesn't shoot great, and sometimes he'll shoot them out of games. The one thing I will say is he was an absolute dog at Oregon. In college, when Dylan Brooks was in college, he was a dog. He was the number one guy on that Oregon team, and he was nasty. That's just something that from I don't want to say my childhood, maybe my teenage years is a better example. Dylan Brooks was one of those guys that was fun to watch in the NCAA tournament. And, usually guys who light it up in college get a little bit more recognition in the NBA. But, hey, he's found a way to still get his name out there. So credit to him. He is a dog. He was a dog in college, though.
Yeah, I believe he actually almost had like a 20-point per game season for the Grizzlies a few years ago. But just imagine if this guy was saying, like, just spewing all this stuff while putting up really good numbers, that would piss people off even more. But the kid in Indiana for the Pacers right now, I believe Mathurin, I believe that's the name, Mathurin. He was like, LeBron's gonna have to show me he's the GOAT. And then this kid everybody's like, oh, this guy is gonna suck. I want this guy to but then he turns out to be a really good bright spot for the Pacers team, and that probably has people seething. So it would be a lot more entertaining if you hear, I feel like if Dylan Brooks goes off in a game, I know that sounds like just like a weird sentence to say now, at least at the moment. But imagine this dude puts up like 20, 25 points and leads the Grizzlies to a win, alongside Ja or whatever. Hits a clutch bucket to win the game. And just like the headlines are probably just like the amount of sound bites you're probably going to have from him. I feel like that would just be trending Twitter the entire rest of the weekend or something like that. But it makes the series a lot more entertaining. And you know what? For him, from a player standpoint, I'm pretty sure he's one of those players you probably would love to have on your team. Hate to play up against. So I feel like the Grizzlies fans are probably I love players like that. I want players like that on my team. Hence Marcus Smart with my Celtics anyway. People are like, oh, I hate, or even Draymond Green with Golden State. Guys you would love to have on your team, and just to piss off opposing fan bases and opposing players too, just to kind of try to win that mental game of it all. But also just to kind of give your team a little bit more of an identity. And it makes him more of a leader because, just to your point, saying, trying to draw attention more to him, kind of be that sponge to kind of, have guys focus on, the main goal, and that's to win a championship at the end of the day, even though I don't think the Grizzlies are there yet. But yeah, I like what he's doing.
Yeah, and before we get off this point, I got two quick things. One, shout out to Tyus Jones because he is a great point guard that doesn't really get a lot of credit. He's a great backup, played really well. So shout out to him. And as far as your point about Mathurin, hey, I'm a big Mathurin guy. When we did the NBA mock draft, I picked him at pick 5 for the Pistons. Eventually, the draft comes around. They take Ivy. I like the pick. I would have picked Ivy there too. When we did our slight mock, Ivy was off the board. So I went with Mathurin instead. But Mathurin, he absolutely went off against the Pistons. And I don't know, it was the first month of the season. And then he scored 25 or something stupid, shot ridiculous percentage from 3. Then it was like, hey, should have drafted me. That's your fault. It's your fault. You didn't have to deal with this, but it's your choice has got you here. So shout out to Mathurin. He's another guy where he'll be good in a couple years and he'll talk, and he's pretty good at it too.
He's got to talk his stuff, and he's got to back it up too. I feel like, thinking about the mock draft we did, I think I went with Johnny Davis, the 14th pick. My God, I don't even know where that. I think he got picked up by Washington, but my goodness, that guy is just. I haven't heard about him since that mock draft stuff, so I guess that tells you a lot. But I would say even right now, or just with the NBA draft looming and stuff, I wanted to get I don't know how much you've been watching of Scoot Henderson, but I wanted to get your opinion on him a little bit because from the way the kid looks, he looks like he's a damn running back going to play basketball.
Yeah, I haven't watched much Scoot, honestly. I'm in a position where I guess I haven't really dove much into the class as a whole. I know a little bit more about some of the college guys in Wembanyama, not as high on the G League guys yet. So I still got to do some digging there. But from what I've seen a little bit. Looks good. And he's
fly.
Yeah, he is athletic as hell. I'm interested to see. And he said something too. He basically said hey, I'm the number 1 pick. Everyone's talking about Wembanyama. I don't really care. I'm number 1. So he may be another guy that likes to talk a little bit coming into the league. But I need to get a little bit more familiar with his game. I'll probably draft. I love draft stuff like any sport. So I'll probably get a little bit further into NBA draft stuff come after the NFL draft, maybe. So here in a couple 2 weeks or so. But lottery. It's going to be interesting how the lottery falls because depending how things shake up, we could be, in for some interesting conversations, especially with Scoot, because I'll bring this back to my Pistons. They're, have the number one draft odds. And if they, fall everyone assumes Scoot is going to go 2. Pistons don't really need a guard. So that could really throw a wrench in the draft if the Pistons fall at 2. May make it tough on the Pistons. May start some trade scenarios for teams that want Scoot. So I think Scoot's going to be an interesting point of discussion, I think, for the next upcoming months. I do think he's a good player, though.
Mm. I would say this. I believe. Wait. So what's the Detroit's backcourt looking like? It's obviously Cade coming back. I feel like Cade's probably gonna put himself be a dog coming back from injury. But wait. Then who's the 2 guard over there?
It's Caden Jaden Ivey.
Jaden Ivey. Okay. I don't know why I was thinking like Jaden Ivey was like a big man or something like that. But I feel like that's just me being like inept to Detroit basketball. So that's on me.
I don't.
No, but I feel like they have a solid foundation with Cade. I feel like that dude is going to be like that kind. He's pretty much like with like LaMelo Ball and those kinds of like taller point guards or just taller like guys who are going to be handling the ball and can still move like a guard, even though they're like 6'8" and something crazy stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess in the in terms of like Scoot, I feel like this wherever he goes, I feel like he's gonna be amazing. But there was something that I was trying to discuss. I forgot if it had something to do with it had something to do with NBA, obviously. But in terms of like draft, so it's just a cloud just on top, just masking it for whatever reason. I should have wrote it down. But yeah, I feel like Scoot is gonna be like he seems NBA ready anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. And the draft, I think this year will be interesting too. Just with how things fall, and there's a lot of good wings this year too. Once you get outside of the top 2, it'll obviously be Wembanyama and Scoot, but there's a handful of good wings. You remember?
I found it. I remember. All right, you know how the NBA is doing wanting the in-season tournament, kind of like the Premier League with soccer. I wanted to get your take on that, and then actually, my brother actually told me like a better alternative in terms of that's what like hasn't come back with like draft stuff and everything. But I wanted to get your take of like the NBA wanting to do like the whole in-season tournament.
Yeah, will you explain this in-season tournament to me? Because I don't really know exactly what the fuck's going on. So if you just want to just go a quick run through with it,
I could try the best I can because honestly, I don't like the idea whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like the Premier League, like all the teams, I guess, like some point in the season, they're gonna play each other, and they even said they're gonna like have different different branding of the courts, different jerseys that the players are gonna wear, and all that, and they're gonna play. I think they were gonna say like single elimination and all that stuff, right? So, and then like I guess at the end of it, like you win a trophy and maybe like some money or something like that. For me, it's just I was looking through like the threads on it on Twitter, and people were saying guys like Peyton Pritchard and not Sadiq Bey, but like pretty much role players and like deep bench guys playing in this tournament. And you see like the Shaq and Kobe compilations because like a bunch of the teams aren't going to be playing their stars in this thing because like they don't think it's going to have the same level of prestige or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's just mainly like a single elimination tournament at some point in the middle part of the season or like the halfway point of the season, just to, I guess, kind of have like some playoff atmosphere to it.
Yeah, I'll say this. That seems like an awful idea that the NBA is doing only to get ratings. It's really what it seems like to me. Hey, we can fill, however many more TV slots and get however many more ads, and that'll drive up our next TV deal. So what it sounds like to me. Sounds like a bunch of garbage that they don't need. Kind of like the play-in tournament. I'm very anti-play-in tournament. We've got 16 teams in a conference. 15, right? 15 teams in a conference.
Yeah, I think 30 teams, yeah.
We've got 15 teams in a conference. 8 make the playoffs. More than half of the teams make the playoffs. Why do you need to give the 9th and 10th seed? If you are the 10th seed in a 15-seed conference, you're literally one of the worst teams, and now you get a chance to make the playoffs? Doesn't make any sense. Quick side rant there. But I hate the play-in tournament. This sounds like an awful idea too. I hope they don't do it.
I think it's already locked in, unfortunately. But yeah, but again, like they were trying to push for an in-season tournament for the last couple of years. But the alternative, and it was actually my brother who said this. I'm pretty sure other people probably threw this idea around too. But instead of the draft lottery, you have a tournament with all the bottom teams in the NBA, and they play out in like a single elimination tournament, and the winner of the tournament gets the number one overall pick, and then it just goes down from elimination. So it kind of has something to do with eliminating tanking to a degree, and it also addresses the whole, oh, we want another tournament through the NBA.
Mhm. I don't hate that as much, but I do hate it. And the reason I don't like it is I'm sounding like an awful hater. I just threw out you just threw up three different ideas, and I was like, no, terrible. But I don't like it because I feel like it'll bury teams at the bottom and make it almost impossible for teams to climb up. But I do think they need to do something about tanking at some level. But I do think you're going to get to the point where you'll have more teams like what the Mavericks did to not make the playoffs this year. You're going to have teams do something like that and then try and make a run to get like a guy like Wembanyama or a top pick. So I think you're going to see a lot of teams that are in this middle ground, that are really like not really in a great spot, whether that be a team like the Blazers or the Wizards have been teams like that for a while that find success, but not really enough. So those type of teams will like benefit from getting elite prospects, and you're just going to have the bad teams are always going to be bad. Like there's no way that a team could ever rebuild itself. So I feel like the second that you're like burying teams as soon as you give that
Yeah,
put that in play.
I feel like just like by hearing it, it was like it just sounds like a better, like at least something a lot more exciting than an in-season tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there'll have to be like something about it, or maybe in terms of like still with like the draft odds anyway, so it's not a guarantee you get that pick or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel like it's mainly like to address like the tanking of the NBA anyway, and then yeah, just like with team, especially with the Mavericks, I never got a chance to like discuss like how like in terms of like the Maverick situation. It's like it doesn't matter to me that like you guys are middle of the road, or like because again, I don't think it was mainly the other guys on that team, on that Mavericks team, that they didn't get to where they wanted to go. Because I feel like obviously some of it has to fall on Luka Doncic. I know Kyrie was balling out when he was over there, but I feel it's like it has something to do with Luka, and I feel like Luka just has to get himself right. And like I feel like he just can't rely solely on his God given basketball ability to have him get through certain things. Because I feel like he can slim down a little bit. I feel like he can put himself in a better position physically to be an even better player. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just him getting out of his own way, even though he's still, even how he's been now, he's still one of the best players in the NBA. But also it's the fact that the Mavericks, like it's more about you got to build, because I told this to Jared some months back. You're on a timer with Luka, because I don't think he's good. He has that same level of loyalty to the Mavericks like Dirk did, and he was there for 20 years. So I feel like you're on a timer before Luka's like, you know what, the hell with this, get me out of here, because it's a lot easier for him to do that and then get put in a different situation. So the Mavericks need to do their best, because I feel like the Mavericks, they're such a fun team when they're good. It was kind of like the same thing I was saying about the Knicks. So I feel it's a matter of both sides, more the Mavericks themselves than Luka, even though he has some stuff to work on. But yeah, just like that whole way of going about it, it's like you have the chance to make the playoffs, and then you don't want to, and you only play your star players like either like I believe like 5 minutes or something wild like that. So I feel like that's not the way you should go about it. Even if you don't think you're gonna make a whole lot of noise in the postseason, if you're one game away and it's between like making the playoffs and a draft pick, still play your guys. Even if you guys lose at the end of it, it's like, well, all right then.
Yeah, yeah. To that point, I do agree that they should have played. They should have tried to win. Because hey, they were win. They shouldn't have won the Sun series last year, right? You that can happen again. You can go further than you think you're going to go. So I do agree they should have played, and I also agree that like the Mavericks, I think, are actually in a similar situation to the Angels in certain respects, in the sense that we have star players on top of absolutely no foundation, or like the rest of the roster is not filled out. Obviously, differences between the players there, but in the sense that the Mavericks aren't good enough with their role players, their bench players, the rest of the starters. They've got two guys that are really good that you can win with. But you need to get better outside of those guys, and that's the biggest thing, is they're not good enough outside of that guys outside of those guys. So I understand, I guess, why they didn't want to win, so they can keep the pick and try and draft somebody to put in with them. But even then, I'm not sure that'll be enough. And like you said, the clock is ticking. Luka's not going to be there forever. Luka could decide, hey, this this isn't working out. They're in a bad spot. And the Mavericks could just bury themselves with bad deals and bad contracts and signing up with bad players. So I could easily see the Mavericks putting themselves in a really bad spot and having that bite them by losing Luka.
Yeah, absolutely. My goodness.
And we had a couple other NBA topics to discuss before we get out of here. The one big one that I'm interested in is the scheduling. Right, we've got 2 playoff games tonight. I think it was 10 and 10:30 East Coast time, or maybe it was 7:30. Whatever the actual time was. 2 games in a 30-minute time span. What are we doing? What are we doing?
See, like, I believe the Sixers play the Nets again today, so I think it may get up to 3. Hold on.
I think we have 3 games, but 2 of them start.
Yeah, you're definitely right about the 10 and 10:30, because you have the Sixers at 7:30, and then you have Kings and Warriors game 3 at 10, and then you have Clippers Suns game 3 at 10:30. Just to address the first point of like the half an hour in between, like the games, regardless, like I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of thing, even though like you can obviously switch between channels, or like obviously people have different ways of watching the games these days. But yeah, like you want as many eyes on the product as possible, and you competing with yourself is only throwing a wrench into that. And especially for some too high, like not really more of the Sixers and Nets, but more of those like highly anticipated games as like Clippers and Suns, even though Kawhi isn't playing tonight. So that may look, but regardless, just in terms of like just the name value, and say those guys were playing, and then Kings and Warriors with Draymond being suspended, and that's like a whole storyline. Like you want as many people to be watching the games as possible. And yeah, they just didn't get out of their own way. Whoever was in charge of making playoff scheduling needs to be fired, because this has been going on for the last few years, because you have them so late in the day. Like I get it, like when in terms of it makes it hard for like time zones and all that stuff. So what would be 10:30 over here, it starts at 7:30. So it's a perfect time and all that stuff. And then you got to worry about the people on the West Coast, that whole thing. I understand that. But it's just, you got to find a way to kind of tailored more to like the entire fan base a little bit, and try to compensate that, or at least have the games go on a little bit earlier, so we're not staying up over here on the East Coast. And so like 1 a.m., even though like people who live overseas and over in Europe have to stay up until like 3 o'clock in the morning to be watching games. So again, I'm not like, I can't experience it from their point of view, but I can understand it a little bit, because we're kind of like the middleman being over here in the East Coast. But yeah, like it's more just to wrap up on that point in particular. It's just get out of your own way so you can get more eyes on the product, and fire your scheduling manager, because that's ridiculous to have half an hour time slots.
Yeah, I'm with you. And no matter how good or how bad or who's going to win or whatever, like who's playing, who's not, in one game you have Kevin Durant, and in the other game you have Steph Curry. I don't care who's playing, who else. Those are 2 of the biggest stars in the sport, playing at 30-minute different time. So this doesn't make any sense, because as we've seen, the NBA will do just about anything for more TV slots and more viewers. We just discussed this silly little tournament that they want to do, presumably just to get more eyes on their product. And now we can't even schedule playoff games so we can get eyes on playoff games. I hate it. I usually do my best to stay positive. I do my best to stay positive on these shows, but today I've thrown out like 4 things. I've been like, what's the NBA doing? This is terrible. I hate it. So I'm being a hater today. This is another example. Don't like it. Just schedule the game. Like, you've got 3 games. I don't care how you do it. Just do, like, you can have games earlier in the day. You can have games starting at, 6 on the East Coast, or however you want to do it. You can start games earlier. Like, you don't have to start them at the same time. Spread them out. It just doesn't make sense to me.
My it's just my goodness when it like especially like these kinds of games, especially first round games. I
Mhm.
would say that's what I was alluding to. Especially first round games. There's so many games like Sunday. Like how hard? Like I get it. They more look at it from their demographic. Like oh, a lot of people are still at work. A lot of people are still at school. I said that. I believe I said this to Hannah fan. That's not going to stop people from trying to watch the games. People will be
Mhm.
on their phone watching the games at school. People will be watching the games at work. Obviously, if you're in one of those professions when you're in charge of like heavy machinery or you're in charge of somebody's life, don't be watching the damn game while you're on the job. But mainly for like people at school or maybe people at a desk job, stuff like that, people are going to watch the games regardless.
Mhm.
Or like there's going to be eyes on it. So like with Sunday, you see how Sunday it was boom back to back to back to back games. Like you can be watching basketball the entire day, and then you got something like today, for instance, is the Thursday. Is the weekend's just coming up, but then you got to wait till 7:30 to watch a game that we pretty sure we know who's going to win, and then you got the one premier game that is Golden State and Sacramento being around like 3 hours after that, and then you got the game with Kawhi not playing, and you have a fair shot that Suns are probably going to take that game decisively, depending on things. But it's mainly you're waiting this long in the day to pretty much, unless you're a fan of those teams, to catch one really good game potentially. So I feel like there's no reason, especially for those kinds of games, not to kind of like act like not to be bashing a lot of these like matchups where oh we're not giving these teams a chance, like if it's like Sixers and Nets, right? So, but it still just means it's more convenience for a larger population of your audience too.
Mhm. Yeah, and to your point about people watching it whenever, like I walked into my class yesterday about 5 minutes late. Class starts at 3. I walk in at 3:05. Dude in the back row watching Damian Lillard highlights on his computer. I'll tell you what, if there was a live NBA game on, he would have been watching it on his computer. So people will find a way to watch the games. Um, I'm with you. I'm with you completely. And unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about on the NBA, we had some MLB news come out while we were recording. So unless you have any more NBA stuff, I got one more MLB topic I want to throw at you. So if
One
you have
one
anything,
one thing for me, you having a class at 3 in the afternoon is crazy to me because I want to be done with class at 2 and I want to be home by like 3. That's just me. And another thing is there's teachers and professors out there that will be streaming the games at the front of the class and be like, you guys just enjoy it. Like I was doing that for March Madness for parts of high
mhm.
school. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, people are going to be getting their eyes on the games one way or another. But that's all I'm going to say.
To your point, I have a 69. I have a 69 on Wednesdays, and so I tend to stay in class a little bit later than need be. So
My
uh,
God.
our class schedules sound like polar opposites, and I don't particularly like the 69. So I get what you're saying. Now, in terms of baseball news, Max Scherzer had the incident where he got tossed for the sticky stuff. While we were recording, report came out, quote, everyone in baseball knows that Max Scherzer will be suspended for 10 games, it sounds like. 10, so they'll be equivalent of 2 starts. So what are your thoughts here? Do you think Scherzer should be getting 10 games for the sticky stuff, considering he did get ejected, but there's also some talk of he didn't actually have a foreign substance on him, and shouldn't have got tossed. So I want to hear your thoughts on that before we get out of here.
Yeah. Max Scherzer to me, I feel is will go down as one of the best pitchers in baseball history, and especially one of the best pitchers of like the last 15 years. And I feel like he's too good of a player to kind of lower himself to having to use like foreign substances and stuff like that. But also him also saying because I saw a quote and it was saying that he puts it on his own kids that he only used it was only sweat and rosin that was found. And something else that was interesting, it was he was popped and got ejected all by the same umpire. I forget. I believe Phil Cuzzy. Phil Cuzzy, that was his name. Same guy popped him for previous ejections before, and I thought that was kind of like an interesting tidbit. But just depending, especially what like people were saying out of the interaction with Scherzer, saying that like their fingers were sticking to his hand or the other way around when they were investigating. I feel that like I would want to give Scherzer the benefit of the doubt because again, it was pretty much what I was alluding to earlier. He's too good of a player to kind of put himself in that situation. But also, I feel like now players or pitchers anyway try their best to be a little bit more discreet because obviously when they started popping guys for the foreign substances and stuff, there were still players out there doing it. I believe there was a guy in Seattle. I forget his name. I think he was a lefty starter for the Mariners, and he kept going into his belt loop and like he kept like you can kind of tell, but like 10-game suspension, I guess it's probably a little over the top. But I guess if this is like the third time they found him for it, then obviously there's protocols, there's policies. I get that, and I feel like at the end of the day he'll be fine. But again, I just at the end of the day I try to give Scherzer the benefit of the doubt because he's just such a great pitcher.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say is it was on his glove hand, right? It was in the glove or however that was.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, can we just look at the glove? Like, if there's a sticky substance on the glove, let's take it in the back. Let's look at the glove. What's in the glove? Let's get to the bottom of this, you know? So I do think there should have been a level of investigation after the fact. And if there is no, like, depending on what they like, the glove is a pretty strong piece on the glove hand. I know there was some clips with some electrical tape as well because he was having pitch com issues at the same time, apparently. So I feel like it shouldn't be hard for the MLB to figure out, hey, is this rosin? Is this a sticky substance? So I think this kind of speaks more to the ineptitude of the MLB and it's forcing its actual rules because you can just look at the glove on the glove hand and go, oh, hey, this is a foreign substance, or oh, hey, this isn't a foreign substance. But I think it also speaks to them trying to protect their umps. The one thing the MLB has always done is they've never thrown the umps under the bus. You can have the worst ump of all time, and the MLB will protect him. It's always been that way. So I think this may play into that as well, where, hey, you know, he shouldn't have got tossed. This isn't a foreign substance, but he got tossed, and we're gonna back the ump here because if people don't believe in the people officiating the game, then they kind of lose faith in the sport in a certain regard. So I do think that's kind of at play here, but I do agree, like, it's a shame to see Scherzer out 10 games, 2 starts, however you want to say it. Not ideal for him. So I hope this doesn't become a recurring issue where we start to see more guys get ejected for sticky stuff. I hope this is an isolated incident, and I hope we can move on from it in the future.
Just kind of like just my last point is that it does spark more conversation and like it connects with like the NBA and MLB, NFL, a lot of these guys and a lot of these officiating crews. Like, when is the accountability going to start coming to those guys? Like, again, like you got a bunch of these guys with like the umpires, I believe, have a union and things like that. That's why Angel Hernandez hasn't been fired or anything like that, or that kind of like that whole thing. And I feel like there needs to be things that are put in place to have accountability because they're so quick. Like, I feel like certain officials are so quick to go on power trips sometimes. Like, even back in spring training when that umpire popped Realmuto because he dropped his glove and he tried to give him the ball.
Crazy.
Those kinds of things, that's something that I feel like need to be addressed. And then even to your point, like situations like this, like there needs to be a better form of investigating and being able to get all the facts and understand exactly what happened. Like, you can't just believe a guy because of the benefit, just giving him the benefit of the doubt, because like, if anything, it just makes like you said, it makes you look inept to the situation, and like to me, it makes it feel it's a little bit lazy at the end of the day. But that's all I'm going to say about it because we'll probably be here forever. We keep talking about bad officiating.
Yeah. We could do a whole nother hour on bad officiating across sports. Don't even get me started. MLB. There's literally a square called the strike zone. You can see when it's in or out of it, in the ball's in or out of it, and you can grade. You can literally see how often guys miss calls. It's not even an objective thing, or excuse me, it's not even subjective. It's objective. There I am again, spinning off into more conversation. But anyways, we're at an hour, so unless you have anything else, I say we're good to wrap.
All good.
All good. So thank you to everyone who tuned in to the daily show. It is the 20th. Tomorrow is Friday, which means we'll have 2 more people in the seats tomorrow talking for an hour about sports. So make sure you tune in then.
All right. Take care, everyone. Be safe out there.